One of the first things that you should know about diminished chords is this. When you see a diminished chord, the first thing that you should probably assume, outside of any larger context, is that this diminished chord is functioning as the 7 diminished 7 of some other chord. For example, if I see a B diminished 7 in the key of C minor, I immediately associate the root of B diminished 7 with the leading tone of the key, which is the 7th scale degree. It is this perspective that tells me that the B diminished 7 in our example is most likely functioning as a 7 diminished 7. We've made videos that cover and explain the common uses of diminished chords as it relates to secondary functions and typical passing diminished chords. Click on the iCard or check the description. But today, I'm going to show you 3 amazing diminished chords that break all of the rules. The sharp 4 diminished 7, the flat 3 diminished 7, and the 1 diminished 7. So let's start with the sharp 4 diminished 7. Out of the 3 chords that we'll be discussing today, this is the one that's most consistent with a typical secondary function use of a diminished 7 chord. In C major, our sharp 4 diminished 7 is F sharp diminished 7, which is also the 7 diminished 7 of 5. G. So when the F sharp diminished 7 is functioning as the 7 diminished 7 of 5, we expect it to resolve to G. But in gospel and blues, you will see this chord connecting the 4 F to the 1/6/4 C over G. So in the key of C, we'll see F to F sharp diminished 7 to C over G. This is a sound that you have undoubtedly heard many times. The sharp 4 diminished 7 functions so similarly to the 7 diminished 7 of 5 that the only way to distinguish between the two is when this chord connects the 4 with the 1/6/4. Our next diminished chord is the flat 3 diminished 7. This chord is used to connect the 3 to the 2. This is exclusively a jazz function. You're not going to find this in classical music. As a matter of fact, if you can find an example of this technique used outside of jazz, please let us know in the comments down below. There's a great example of this in Someday My Prince Will Come. In the first ending, we see D minor 7, C sharp diminished 7, C minor 7. At first glance, this C sharp diminished 7 would be seen as the 7 diminished 7 of D minor. But this chord is not functioning in this manner because it's not resolving to D minor 7. In fact, it's moving away from D minor 7. So what does this mean? Well, as we stated before, all of the diminished chords in this video break from the norm as it relates to how we typically see diminished chords used. This chord is better interpreted as a passing diminished that connects the 2 to the 3, in which case it would be more accurately expressed as a D flat diminished 7, the flat 3 diminished 7. This flat 3 diminished 7 is so important in the jazz genre that it deserves its own place in the tonal landscape. So this is actually a case in which the real book is wrong and right at the same time. What do I mean? Well, yes, in the context of this progression, in this key, C sharp diminished 7 is not the literal harmonic interpretation of what is happening here. However, it is the best possible expression of this chord 10 times out of 10. Nobody wants to deal with D flat diminished 7, D flat, F flat, A double flat, and C double flat. C sharp diminished 7, C sharp, E, G, and B flat is way more accessible and user-friendly. Don't forget, the primary role of most charts and a lot of music notation is communicating the idea as easily, instinctively, and as efficiently as possible. And lastly, we have the 1 diminished 7. This is a chord that is entirely predicated on the idea of delayed gratification. This chord is a great chord to use when you want to introduce tension into the progression without ever leaving the 1 chord. You can also see this as an altered 1, or a 1 with tension, or the wrong 1 chord. Kind of like playing the wrong chord on purpose and then immediately correcting your mistake by following it with the correct one chord. Like our last example, this is also a diminished chord that you will find exclusively in jazz. And again, let us know down below if we're wrong about this. We can find the two best ways to use this diminished chord in the song Upper Manhattan Medical Group. In measure 5, we can see a delayed arrival to the 1 chord by way of the 1 diminished 7. And in the last 3 measures, you can see the 1 diminished 7 used in between 2 1 chords. We play the right chord, then the wrong chord, and then the right chord again. This chord also deserves its very own special place within the map of tonal harmony. You'll find it at the 6 o'clock position opposite the 1 chord in the tonic region of the map. So hopefully you now have a better understanding of these 3 awesome diminished chords that work on a completely different plane than all other diminished chords. If you're interested in any of the books and apps that we featured in today's video, check us out at mDecks.com. These are not only great tools for any musician, but your patronage really helps us out. You can also support us by just liking, subscribing, or commenting on the video and sharing with your friends. Thanks for watching.